Welcome to Interstellar Cosmic Conversations, where we share experiences from our hearts to empower others. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Interstellar Cosmic Conversations. Today, our guest is Heather Carter. Heather lives a beautiful life in Malibu, California on Sacred Chumash Indian Land. Heather is a conscious creator being, mermaid, a soul council facilitator, and a yogini, to mention a few things. As a lifelong cosmic voyager of all things unusual and different regarding spiritual and paranormal matters, Heather was guided to explore many different life, work, and spiritual paths. This journey led her to traveling the world as a professional dancer, teacher, living in and exploring sacred sites all over this beautiful planet. All of those adventures shaped her views, and her understanding of life. Welcome, Heather.
Thank you so much, Patricia, for having me. I'm so happy to be here sitting with you.
Yeah, thank you. And it's really an honor to have you here. What I would like to share with everyone is that Heather and I connected a few years back through our connection to George Cavassalis on Facebook. And I always felt this just really deep, sacred connection to her. And I didn't really know how to explore it at the time. And we were so fortunate this year to be able to attend George's event, Transcending the God Matrix. And we actually shared a room together, and we got to connect and share memories and just really bond with one another as soul sisters. And I just find Heather's, her natural wisdom, her ability to connect to the earth, the sun, the sea, just in an organic nature, is such an inspiring message for all of us, male and female, not just female. I wanted to say for the feminine, but I feel like it's for the masculine and the feminine, because we've all kind of lost touch with that, and we're trying to sort that out. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for that beautiful introduction. And it was such a great, fun, joyous time, and also incredibly intense and profound at the same time. But the instant recognition soul level was just instantaneous, and being with you in person and having that time was really, really profound and fun for me. Super fun. And I'm really honored to be here and be able to communicate and have this time together.
Well, and thank you. And I am too. Heather is really well known in Malibu for her being a mermaid. And she's actually made is it the Malibu Times?
It was Malibu Times Magazine.
Malibu Times Magazine, where they had mentioned, just the joy that she gives to children in their ability to actually connect on a level that has always been kind of mythological, but we know that it's not.
Indeed. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so you knew that about yourself at a very young age. And what I find so interesting to me is that you live on a land where I feel there's so much depth, so much sacred, ancient energy. And then it's also got this like chaotic, like Hollywood celebrity type vibe going on. And the two of them are kind of like in complete opposition with one another. But there's also like, and I'll just share this with you, because I find this really cool, and I think it'll connect a few things with you and I. I had a relationship with a guy that was originally from Italy, and his family migrated over to the United States into California. And they actually founded a big winery that's very well known. And he was like this cool surfer dude, and everyone would have said, oh, he's so open-minded, but he was open-minded in a matrixy type of way. instead of like in the earthy, organic way. So with you and the natural connection that you have, how did that play out in your life growing up?
Oh gosh. I mean, I think from the time I was really small, I just didn't want to wear shoes. I didn't even really want to wear clothes, honestly. I was very connected to just life and earth and the earth and being outside. And I grew up in an era in the 60s where we spent a lot of time outside, and we did have our share of television and cereal on Saturday mornings, but for the most part, you know, we played outside. We played hide and go seek. I jump roped. I rode bicycles. I roller skated. I connected in. I would even go out in the rain and play out in the pouring rain with my Noah's Ark toy, and you know, mimicking the flood and remembrances of that. And it's an instant connection that I've always felt, and I always fulfilled that desire and that need and that knowing throughout my entire life. I never let it wane, fortunately.
Did you ever find that in contradiction, like just going through your elementary school years into your, like, you know, high school years? Did you find that you were ever in contradiction with what was being presented to you with your friendships, your relationships, and how you wanted to express yourself even in that environment?
Oh, certainly so. I mean, I grew up, you know, like I said, in the 60s, and I was having some pretty intense, you know, kind of extraterrestrial experiences as a child, and also was incredibly rebellious, I guess would be the right word, to school and the system and all those things. Although I excelled at sports and I had a lot of friendships and I liked to have fun, I was very competitive in sports and things like that. But academically, I never really fit in. And even as a child, I always said to myself, parents and adults are treating me like a child, and I'm not a child. Why aren't they treating me like a human? And I said to myself, when I get older, I'm going to treat children like I wanted to be treated when I was little, which was just on a human level, just speaking as a normal person. So I think that that's been carried out throughout my entire life. And I definitely encountered a lot of challenges, a lot of judgment, and a lot of ridicule for that, for sure.
Yeah, that's really interesting because I was just sharing with someone recently that was really struggling with parenting her daughter. Um, she didn't want to necessarily project things on her child that she was experiencing now. And I said, you know, what's interesting to me is we seem to forget that when we created our journeys, we weren't creating as a child. We were these infinite creator beings creating an experience that a child would have. And so there's so many times that when we see these little beings and we're like in awe of them and we're like, where did all this wisdom come from? It's because they were always creating from that ancient knowing.
Mm-hmm. Well, and yeah, and I think too, I always knew I created my reality. It was something that I didn't have the words or the languaging back then, but it was something that I always knew, because whenever I really wanted something, I absolutely got it. And if ever I was competing in something, I won. And if I ever was doing something, I excelled in it fully. And it wasn't until many years later that I understood that I was basically recreating my reality 100%, and that there was no mistake about that. And then I did it in a conscious way, which is different than just doing it without knowing that you're doing it, you know?
Well, yeah, and so I will share this with you because I was experiencing some of the same things. Like there was a lot of times, and just because you know me personally, you've heard my my personal story. But there were many times that I would find myself maybe not so much in my very younger age, like preteen age, but once I got into the teenage years and then after, that I would start to realize that, wow, I am creating this. Like if someone said, for example, I was taken to an event at a church, and it was so funny because I wasn't raised in religion, but I think this man just felt really sorry for me. He was like, "Hey, can I take her to an event?" And so they were like, "Hey, here's the thing. Let's just like guess what's in this package, and whoever guesses it, they get to take it home. That's their gift." And I was like, "Well, it's a jewelry music box," and I just random out of nowhere. And everybody's coming up with all these different things, and I'm like, "It's a music jewelry box," and they're like, I don't think they would ever have thought that anyone would have gotten it, but I did, and I took it home. And it was like one of those moments where you're questioning yourself, like, how did I know this? But then I could look back later in life, and go, oh, okay. That was one of those moments where I was supposed to remember I am an infinite creator being, and I knew this all along,
Yeah.
Yeah. So when it came to connecting, and you're such a earth bound, sea beautiful being, like you're just, everything about you just exudes earth and water and just all the elements of earth in such a deep way that many of us can't even comprehend, because we haven't even had the connection. We can't remember the connection that we have the way that you do. When you started connecting with the ocean, and your connection to the mermaid aspect of yourself, how old were you, and how did that all come about?
I think my first recollection, I always loved water, and when we were living in Los Angeles until about 1973, and then we moved up to the mountains near Yosemite National Park, and we lived in a place called Bass Lake. And the summer times were open and free back then, and my mom had to work, so I would take myself down to the lake, and I would literally swim all day long and hang out at the lake. And I had a lot of freedom to do that. My mom gave me and trusted me, and I was a pretty strong swimmer and all that, but I just wasn't afraid of the water, where a lot of people were and a lot of kids were. And I think it started then. It wasn't like a conscious thing, I think, back then, but it was until much later, when I was a showgirl in Vegas, that I was literally thrust into a tank, a 10,000-gallon tank, to cover for the mermaid who was sick in our show, in a show called Splash. And I immediately just felt like it was natural to have a tail, and I thought that was really interesting. And I was living a very conscious spiritual life at that time, but didn't really put it all together until many years later. But I knew back then that I wanted to take the tail out to sea, and that was in 1992. So that was quite a few years ago. Back then, mermaids were, now they're everywhere, and you can buy tails everywhere, and it's very popular. Back then, it wasn't that popular. So it was a very cool thing to be able to see a woman with a tail swimming in the tank. And it was something that I wanted to just get a tail and take it out to the sea and connect in with the land and with the ocean beings. So it wasn't until many years later that I actually did that. But prior to me getting an actual tail, I started swimming with a monofin. It was kind of like going from, a tadpole, the metamorphosis of the aquatic kind of thing, like getting a monofin with my feet, swimming with my legs together. And I remember one of the first experiences I had, I went for a very long swim, and I was followed by a sea lion the entire way. And he kept about 5 feet away from me, but I just didn't have any fear, and I just felt so natural, and I just felt like I was home, swimming through the kelp beds. And then as I've developed swimming every day for the last 6 years in the sea, all year round in a bathing suit, and just kind of building up my immune system and my body to the cold water and to the warm water, and adapting as with life as we do, going out in the harsh weather and going out when it's beautiful, I started to really tap into the elements of the sea and the beings of the sea that were unseen. Of course, I was connecting in with the animals and the fish, and having all kinds of crazy experiences with, sea lions and dolphins and whales and that type of thing, and lots of big fish. But I never really connected in truly with the aquatic races and the Lady of the Sea and that type of thing until quite a few years ago. And then when I started to go into that realm, that took me into another whole other arena of my connection with the water and my understanding of life and my origins, and being a bipedal human on this planet, but having this deep, deep connection with the sea, and being a mermaid and like swimming with my legs together, and wondering if it was, genetic engineering or if it was an organic expression, and kind of understanding that and reconciling that was a huge thing for me.
So you felt with all the beings that you were connecting to within the water, you did feel that the mermaid was the one that you connected to the most deeply.
I would say the mermaid or the selkie. The selkie is the tradition of the seal, the woman who becomes a seal, and the seal who sheds her skin and becomes a woman, and that lore that goes back to Ireland.
Okay.
But certainly both. I mean, when I have my tail on, I'm, as they say in French, 100% mermaid, 100% sirène. But when I'm also just swimming with the sea lions, I feel a deep, deep, deep family kin connection with them. It's crazy. It's crazy.
Mm-hmm. It's the same thing when I connect with the sea lions, it's really deep and intense. And I also noticed something, and it's not going to even compare with what you're sharing, but the reason I'm going to express this is because everyone is not where you are. And I feel like what's so beautiful is when, there's so many things going around about how everything's within, and we always need to go within, and that's really true. I mean, that's very truthful. But at the same time, we also came here to co-create, and in co-creation, we also trigger memories in one another. And so for me, it's been so awkward for me because I was born March 20th, 1967, and I'm a Pisces. And I've had this love for water and this fear for water at the same time. And I couldn't really get the connection. Like, how can I be a Pisces in this incarnation and have such a fear for water at the same time? But I had a lot of traumatic experiences in this incarnation with water. And I'm sure that had a lot to do with trying to disconnect me from that a little bit. Mm-hmm. But I remember, but recently, I was doing swimming just at the YMCA locally. And I found myself, I was watching all these people swim. And I thought, this is so weird to me because everybody's like doing all these massive breaststrokes and their legs are kicking and flailing all over the place. And my legs are going, I mean, I'm confining myself. And even my arm movements and my feet movements are very gentle. There's no major splashing going on. There's nothing that's chaotic. It's just like this smooth, I'm in a flow. And I'm really angry because I'm like, I don't know why I'm swimming in this chlorinated water. I just don't really like that. I really want to be back in the ocean. But I'm still going there and experiencing everything. And I'm like, whoa, I was really tapping into that aspect of myself that was a mermaid and that knew what it was like to be the mermaid. And I was like, why does this feel so foreign to me? Why am I so disconnected from this to where I don't have the relationship that you have? But it came forward in that. I mean, it was presenting itself to me in a way that I stood out. If you were to see all the lanes of everyone swimming, I would have stood out as this person that there was no splashing going on. I'm like kind of like a torpedo under the water, I guess. And that was that mermaid aspect of me coming out. And so I really got that. But I felt so disconnected from that part of myself, just from the trauma from this life. And so when I think about what you bring into the awareness of all of us that have our connection to the aspect of ourselves in the sea is so relevant in remembrance, because it was because of you that when I was in there, I was like, oh, that's what this is. And I was able to connect to that.
Well, yeah, and I think water triggers different things for different people. And certainly for me, I appreciate you sharing that, because that's really beautiful. The aspect of remembrance of my lifetimes in Lemuria and Atlantis, where, you know, those type of beings were very prominent and all plentiful, maybe is the right word. I remember those aspects of myself, and I've had some dreams and remembrances that connect me into that. But then going into a deeper level, I've had experiences and dreams where I've experienced myself drowning and being, you know, being drowned purposefully by others. And there is that aspect of the connection of water that could be fearful. And I'm certain I've been eaten by animals in the water as well. But there's something quite astounding that happens for me personally, and I know it is just a personal experience, but when I'm swimming and it's really cold, or it's painful, or I'm in discomfort, at some point my body switches over and goes into a place of the pain turns to pleasure, and then I'm in this place of complete, I call it ninja training. It's like I'm being tested for all my worth. And it's in those spaces that I have had the deepest and most profound connections to my understanding of water and my existence. And not to mention, we ruminated in water for 9 months in our mama's belly. And, you know, quite frankly, the whole planet is covered in mostly water. Our bodies are made up mostly of water. And we drink water, and, you know, we love to take showers and all those things. So it's, to me, it's all the same energy. It's just different manifestations and different expressions. So my encouragement to people, most people are afraid of what's under their feet when they go in the ocean, or what's under them, because of Jaws and all these things that have incited a lot of fear in people. And what I try to do is to just help people, you know, you have to work through it on your own and go through your own transformation and experience of your connection, because everyone's experience is so completely unique. There are no, I mean, some people go, well, why are you so into it? You know, and me starting my mermaid career at 50, whatever it was, I think I was 50 years old. I mean, that's kind of a funny time to become a professional mermaid again, even though I was back in the day. But I just didn't want to have to apologize or explain myself to anybody. It was just something innate that I wanted to have that experience and share the joy with children, because children actually really believe. There's still children that actually believe and understand those things. So as long as we can preserve those memories and spark that memory in children, I think, and even adults have come up to me, grown men, weeping and crying, saying, oh my gosh, you know, I've always dreamed of mermaids and known that they were real, and this is the closest thing I've ever experienced. And this is, you know, a grown man with a beard who was just walking by when I was doing a party for a kid. Mm-hmm. So you just never know, like you said, who you're going to impact and who is going to be influenced by that. But, you know, my exploration of the beings in the sea has also been incredibly deep and profound for me at the last year, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, even like with me, you know, my husband, he has a deep memory of us being in Atlantis. I have zero of he and I there, but he has a deep, profound memory. And every time that I have felt like, why is he with me? Because we're so in opposition to one another in our belief systems. Because there's been so many times that I was caught up in my belief systems. And I would just say our belief systems, was because he had this memory that I didn't have. And he knew his role. And so he stood by me and supported me on every level to allow me to explore what I needed to explore to get there. And I'm still not even there, but he still is like, what, but I know. And there's just so much beauty in that, because there's been many times in, you know, our experiences that we come in contact with someone and they remember something about us that we don't.
Mm-hmm.
And we know why we're connected to them. And it's such a beautiful experience when you're in that situation, to where you just hold that space for that person lovingly while they are still unfolding.
Mm-hmm.
And so, that's just, to me, that's just really beautiful.
Indeed. Yeah.
Yeah. And, there's something that you shared that really spoke to me on a very deep level that I wanted to go into in our conversation today. And it was about, it's about relationship. It's about the love bite that
Mm-hmm.
you experienced. And the fact that you traveled, you've done a lot of traveling. So one of the things that I wanted to ask you, you shared privately, but not so privately, with George Cavazos on his website, weareinfinite.love. And you talked about your love bite experience. But you also shared that you had been a world traveler. And so I wanted to ask you, where did you travel, and what inspired you to go travel to the places that you went to?
Yeah, I think my mom really instilled my desire to travel, even though she didn't do that in her lifetime that much. She hasn't done that, but we always watched, it's funny, television back in the 60s and 70s, but Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom. I remember watching that show and going, oh yeah, I know Africa. I'm going to be there someday. I'm going to go there someday. And I think I always knew I was going to travel a lot. And the first Lonely Planet book that I ever got was for Australia. And funnily enough, I have not been to that continent yet. It's on the to-do list, or to-be list, I should say. And so when I got out of high school, I started to become a professional dancer. And one of the things I wanted to do as a professional dancer was to go travel, because there was a lot of job opportunities to go to other countries and other places. So that's how it initially started. I went to Japan when I was 25 and was there for 3 months, and then came back. And then I moved to Vegas, and then I went back to Japan, and I went through Europe, and I traveled all by myself through Europe and Greece, and worked over there teaching as a counselor, and then came back, and then went to Japan again, and then I came back, and then I moved to Senegal, West Africa, when I was 30 years old. And I lived there for almost 3 years, and then I traveled back and forth, living there and living in the States for quite a few years. So that's what, I don't know if there was any, it was just a familiarity that I knew that was something that I could do. And a lot of people thought it was really unusual to do that, but I didn't know any different, because I was single, I didn't have family, I didn't have children, and I was working as a server, and I was working as a professional dancer. So I had a lot of freedom that a lot of people don't have, and I wasn't afraid. And so I just would work and sell my things, and then go and buy a one-way ticket, and then come back, and then figure it out and go again. And that's how I traveled through Europe. I just worked, and then I bought a ticket and traveled around. And yeah, so it was kind of something that it just was known to me. It wasn't like I knew anything different. And I always knew that that's what I would be doing. So that was pretty consistent and pretty steady for many, many years, until about maybe 10 years ago. And I've traveled a lot since then, but not in that capacity. Since being in a relationship, my husband and I travel a lot, but not in that way. I don't go spend months and months places, and I'm much more grounded and rooted where I'm living.
So was traveling for you on that level about just going to places that were familiar to you that you needed to go and explore again?
A lot of them were, especially when I was in Greece and in England, and Europe. Yeah, some of the places I didn't realize that I needed to go there, but it was just drawn to go there. And other places where I was on a mission, like Greece. I had to go to Lesbos to see the school where Sappho taught her poetry. It was just, and then I had to go to the place, many different parts of the island where they, different things had happened and transpired. And especially in England, I had to go to Glastonbury, I had to go to Stonehenge and Avebury and have those experiences in Bath, which is a beautiful area near Glastonbury. And it was it was a longing and a calling that was beyond, it was just familiarity, and a lot of kind of memories were sparked and fulfilled in those moments, and a lot of things were completed. And it was just me needing to be on the earth, on the body of that part of the earth for that period of time. So,
Yeah, I can really relate to that because there's one place in particular, and I have no idea why at this point, but it's just like Scotland is just like screaming at me like, you've got to be there. And I don't know why, but when I see it, I break down every time. Anytime I look at that landmass, I just feel like really getting into a fetal position and just bawling my eyeballs out because there's something that's so unresolved there. And it's something that I feel like has to happen for me.
Yeah, I think it's natural. And I felt that way in a lot of places, and especially in the United States. I had to go to Hopi. I mean, it was crazy. I had to go to Hopi. And, the Navajo Res and all those other ones. Nope, it was Hopi. I had to go on Hopi twice, and I had a very, very intense, challenging journey both times I went, but it was absolutely necessary that I had to go through that experience. But it was beyond my comprehension from my mind space or understanding it on an intellectual level. It just was beyond that. I had to go. Yeah.
So after you went, do you know why you had to be there?
For the first trip, the first trip I was in a feverish state. I had 103 fever from the time that I landed in Sedona to the time and driving up into Hopi, which is a good, 5-6 hour drive, whatever. I was in a feverish, in and out of, not consciousness, but in and out of a high fever, and managed to go up to Second Mesa and go see Prophecy Rock and do all those things. And then once I got back to Sedona and then got on the plane to come home, it was almost like the sickness went away and I felt better immediately. And it was so deep and multidimensional in ways that were far-reaching and unexplainable. The second time I went, it was more of a sacrificial kind of, for lack of a better explanation. My car got broken into and a lot of things were taken from my car. The water wasn't working when I got up there. They had no running water. I couldn't bathe. They didn't even have water to drink, really. It was pretty intense. And then I was also seeing the level of what was happening there on the reservation with the people and my role in it, in a way that was just so deeply personal. So, still unfolding, quite frankly. I have a deep, deep connection to that land, but it's kind of like a push-pull. It's like a part of me loves it and another part of me hates it. It's really interesting. Yeah. But, it's just different places hold different memories. I mean, certainly when I went to Glastonbury and walked the tour and got up on top of the tour during the autumnal equinox and got back into the Arthurian memories and lore of that time and being present at that time, that was huge for me, massive. And going to Lesbos too was another big, big, big churning in my soul.
Anything you want to share from there or no?
Oh, from Lesbos?
Yeah.
I had a very funny experience. It's kind of mundane, but it was really funny travel experience. I rented a moped to get to Sappho's school from the other side of the island. And as with any place like that, I'm like, oh yeah, that should just take you a couple hours. Shouldn't be that long at all, like if that. Well, the moped only went like 25 miles per hour. So I was just buzzing along and following all the signs. And it took me almost 6 hours to get there. So my butt was sore. I was starving. I was tired. I didn't even know where I was going. And I finally get to this last turn, and I'm just thinking to myself, my gosh, this couldn't have been the slowest journey of my entire life. Like, I can't believe I slept all this way to go down here. And I'm driving down this last little bit of hill, this the last few miles into Lesbos, or into the town, and I was literally the only person on the road, and it was blazing sun, was so strong, and then all of a sudden I just saw something in the center of the road, so I pulled over and I went out in the middle of the road, and there was this giant tortoise just in the middle of the road, and the symbology and the irony was so gorgeous. I literally laid on the burning asphalt and got eye to eye with this turtle and just had a full-on conversation with this turtle, and just thought to myself, what a beautiful gift.
Yeah.
Thank you for showing up and teaching me about patience. The last one there is the first one to be there. And the other cool thing that happened there, I brought my tarot deck with me that I've carried with me and given readings with for almost 30, coming up on 30 years, the Mother Peace deck. And I brought it with me. It was in my backpack. And when I got to the remains of Sappho's school, of course, I was the only one up there, and I just walked around the school and I was touching the walls, and I thought to myself, I said out loud, I said, I wonder if all these years later that she would know that people would be coming to pay homage and tribute to her. And then it was just like this flood came over me, and I went, of course we knew, because I was there. And so I broke down and wept for quite a while from that realization. And again, did not know it until that moment that I had my hands in the wall of that building. And then I did a tarot reading in the middle of the school as a form of divination for my journey. And that was really also very profound, and kind of getting the juju of that area in my cards and all that. So that was fun. And I think just to segue into Senegal and Africa, because that was a biggie. That was a...
Well, yeah, that's where I wanted to go next. And what I really would love for you, if you're wanting to go there, I know that Africa is a key factor in your love bite experience. And so I would love, because of the sessions that you're doing and the experience that you had, I would really love it if you would be willing to go back to how you first met this person and how the whole relationship played out. Because I feel like, so many people have had these experiences, but they feel so uncomfortable in sharing them because it makes them feel maybe like something's wrong with them, or that they're flawed, or that they don't have a moral compass, or something's not quite right, whatever it is, however they view it. Mm-hmm. And to be able to go into this and share your experience and how you went through the experience, how painful the experience was, and then how you came out and healed from the experience would be beautiful for people to hear.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah,
I mean, I touched upon it in my interview with George quite a bit, but the basic ethos is that before I moved to Senegal, which I didn't share this with George because I remembered it after the fact, I had a dream apparently, and I didn't even remember, but I had told my older brother about it, and he reminded me of it when I got back from Senegal. I had a dream. At that point, I'd been studying African dance for quite a few years. And the impetus and the reason why I was going to Senegal was to further study African dance and live in Africa, which I thought I was since I was a child, and just, bought a one-way ticket and moved there. But I had this dream that I had a djembe drum, which is a typical drum from West Africa. And I buried the drum in the ground in the dream. And when I pulled it up later, the drum was just completely black and decayed. And I didn't really understand the meaning of that. And I also did, I don't know if you're familiar with astrocartography, which is basically where you see an astrologer and they look at the map of the world and see which places would be good for you to go visit and what places are not good for you to go visit, like as far as your chart goes. Well, the point of Senegal, directly the point of Senegal was a really contentious point on my chart, to where my cartographer said to me, you know, if you choose to do this, you're going to get your ass kicked big time. And I was like, no, I can't believe that, because I have such a strong connection. I got to go, and da-da-da. And so I just kind of blew it off. But the reality was, even prior to getting there, everything was so divinely orchestrated in kind of a creepy way. I didn't even have a place to stay. Literally the day before I left, I had no idea where I was going to go. And I met a woman the night before I left for Senegal, who was Senegalese, who was in America visiting, and she was leaving the next day with me on the same plane, and said, you can stay at our house. So, which was really great, because it allowed me to have a place to land and all that. And it was an amazing experience. She was a sweetheart of a woman with a family and children. They were very conservative compared to the people that I ended up connecting with, which were much more kind of wild, gypsy-like people. But she gave me a really safe place to land for about a month. And then she introduced me to another friend of hers who rented me a house in an area called Sacred Heart. Which is, you know, another beautiful metaphor for the whole story. So when I arrived, I was so drawn to go visit this family that I'd wanted to study dance with. And she took me there. I think it was the second night that I arrived there. She just dropped me off in that area, because it's not a great part of town, and it's not a place that she would stay. And she just said, you know, call me later, or have them call me later, and I'll come pick you up. So when I arrived, I was so enamored and so taken, because I still was, you know, in Africa. I was out of America, and I was just on this journey. And the smells and the sights and the women and the clothing and the food and everything was just so seductive and alluring. And I was in a room with a bunch of people, and this person walks in, and I looked at him and I just went, holy shit, am I in trouble? Like, I just felt like the whole thing was playing out in front of my eyes, and I just went, but I gotta go do this. Like, I have to do this. How crazy is that? I know this is like the worst thing I could possibly do, but I have to do it. And from that moment on, the infatuation and the level of connection around him was so just seductive and destructive, and I lost myself in ways that I can't even explain. I mean, it's so far reaching. I engaged in a relationship with him, and it's funny, his mom at that point said, oh, you don't want to go with him, you want to go with his older brother, he's much more, you know, better for you. I was like, no, it's this one I want. And he was so young, and he didn't know, he'd never seen a white girl, you know what I mean? It was just, the whole thing was right out of like a bad storybook. We engaged in this relationship it went on for 8 years, off and on. The details in between are just too many to detail, but basically, I lost myself in ways that I had never done before. I lost friendships with longtime friends who were concerned about my well-being, being involved with this person, because they just didn't get it, and they just couldn't see how I could do this. I spent more money than I could possibly even fathom on him and his family, trying to please him and trying to win him over and do nice things for him that were completely, they weren't totally unreciprocated, but they were completely taken for granted. And I ended up, you know, marrying him in a religious ceremony, a African ceremony, so it wasn't a civil ceremony. And he wasn't even in the country. He had already come to America, and I was coming back from Africa to go be with him, but we had wanted an African wedding, so we had the wedding. So the beautiful irony was he wasn't even at the wedding. Yeah, it's like that in Senegal. So, and people who've been to Senegal and married Senegalese people have had a similar experience to mine, so I'm not the only one. I'm just sharing that with you. But when we got back to America, we were living in New York, and immediately it was evident that it was, going to go nowhere fast. He was having affairs. He had an affair with this woman and ended up having 2 babies with her. When we were in Senegal, he had a baby with another person and with his first girlfriend. So it was just ongoing. And I couldn't see the forest through the trees. I couldn't get him away from me. I couldn't get out of the relationship. It was all consuming on so many levels. It was scaring me, because I thought to myself, I'm a bright, smart person. Like, how is this happening? Why can't I get out of this? And what is this about? And it wasn't until many years later when I discovered Eve Lorgan's work, how classically Lovebite it was, that it was so orchestrated on so many different levels. And the way that it all ended up playing out in the end was quite amusing. And I shared this in my interview with George, but I'll share it again because it was quite funny. I probably should backtrack and tell you this not so small detail. So just because it's pretty intense. The relationship I had with the person, his brother was living in, and I had broken up my relationship with my husband and was just kind of living. But I still was having the Lovebite feelings, and he was with somebody else at the time living in New York, and I had moved to California. But I still wanted to please him and his family that I ended up legally marrying his brother to help him get a green card, because that's how much I was invested. And the bottom line is that turned into me going to the INS and almost getting arrested, almost getting my mom arrested. He ends up getting deported, the brother, and there's that whole dynamic, right? And then I'm completely shunned from his family. After everything that had gone on, they just didn't want to have anything to do with me. So, but I was still allured by this person, by my original, husband that I married out of what I thought was love. And one night I was sleeping in my apartment in Santa Monica, and I woke up from a dream state, and I experienced these 3 orbs of light coming into my room. They morphed and turned into fairies, and there was thousands of fairies just flying throughout my house, and in my ears and up my nose, and pulling on my eyelashes and pulling on my facial hair. And just, it was this really intense but kind of funny and fun experience. And then they morphed back into their orbs and left. And then I heard something outside my window, and I opened up my window, and a craft comes down, a spacecraft comes into my driveway, because my driveway was right next to my bedroom. And in this craft was a bunch of, beings in the front that looked kind of Orion-esque, because the only way I felt like they were from Orion. And the craft had kind of like a glass top that came up, and it opened up. And then I saw these beings in the front, but I saw a bunch of human men in the back, kind of seating areas. And they were all very kind of zombie, just looking straight like they were there and present, but not inhabited. And then all of a sudden I heard a knock on my door. I open up the door, and there's the main guy that was flying the craft, and he's standing there with my ex in his hand, who was looking like a zombie. And kind of, I was like, no, I don't want him here. And he pushes him in and just taps on his shoulder, and he wakes up and he looks around. He's like, how did I get here? And this was all kind of on the astral, but it wasn't really an astral experience. It was just a multi-dimensional experience. And I said, I put my hand on his heart, and I said, you can't do this anymore. You can't come into my space, and you can't try to come into me and get me and hook me back in. It's not going to work anymore. And it was the first time that I had ever stood up to him and to the situation in a way that felt really integral. And he said, no, 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 but I really love you and I love you and I swear and I'm going to leave her and I'm going to come to you. And it was this whole kind of trying to seduce me. And I said, no, you can't do this anymore. And as soon as that kind of connection was really solidified and made, in the meantime, I could see out of the corner of my eye, all the beings and the craft outside were kind of like partying, and there was like music going on and they were having a good old time, but the human men were still kind of in the back. And he got the message and telepathically said, you need to come and get him. And he came and got him, tapped him on the shoulder. He, kind of went out and put him back on the craft. The craft thing came down and they flew away. And, people would say, oh, that was just a crazy dream or whatever. No, it was actually the beginning to the end. That was the end of my connection. Next time I saw him, I felt nothing in that capacity. There was no charge like there had been for so long. And it was one of those experiences now in retrospect, knowing what I know, so completely orchestrated. And I would know what the signs are like now. And I'm not in a relationship like that anymore, thankfully. So I don't have to worry about that. I'm in a very healthy, loving, supportive, nurturing relationship with a man who has a lot of integrity and a lot of respect and dignity, and who treats me very well. And we have mutual love and respect for each other. So wanted to get that in, because I do believe that when you connect with your heart, soul, and connect with your soul family, that you will find your mate, if that is indeed what you aspire to have happen. And I'm blessed to have been in a very healthy relationship for 11 years.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. That was really beautiful. And I really resonate with that a lot, because I had a very similar experience. And I didn't have the situation that you had with the craft, but there was a definite transitionary period where, when I had an opportunity to come back into contact with this person, that when we had this one-on-one interaction, it was so clear to me that this was no longer what I had thought it was. I had the experience. Well, it was because this is interesting. It's because he came in. David, my husband now, came in at a very crucial time in my relationship with this person, because it was truly, you will commit now and we'll go on and we'll do this for the rest of our lives, or we part ways. And all of a sudden, David just appears. And when he appears, he just completely alters this whole dynamic that I'm experiencing. And I don't even have a clue why, because I didn't really get our connection. I don't think I was plugged in enough at that time for me to really be able to grasp it. But David was, and that's why he was always the one that was able to hold the space for me until I was ready. And so it was just like, when everybody's like, what are you doing? Why are you choosing David? Why aren't you going with this guy? Because he was so convincing on every level. Like, he was put in this perfect position to be like the guy. And why wouldn't you be with the guy? And had David not come along, that's probably the path that I would have taken. So it was a definite time of transformation. And I can remember even looking back, and I kept thinking, I don't even know why I made this choice. I was scratching my forehead literally, like, why did I just do this? Because it didn't make sense to me, because I knew I was going to the left, but now all of a sudden, no, I'm committed to the right. And that's where I'm going. And I had no idea why.
Yeah.
So, thank you for sharing that. That was really an awesome share. And I think it's going to help a lot of people.
You're welcome.
Yeah. And so what I want to do now is I want to go into something that something that you are doing now in your current journey with helping other people. And I feel like this is probably a good place to close for you. in what you're doing. And let me go to where, here we go. Okay. The work that you're doing now is so significant in helping people that have had severe drug, alcohol, and mental health issues. And you're working with them, and you're doing like yoga therapy with them, and you're connecting with them on a level that, you know, they're not really connected with in the healthcare system. And one of the reasons that you can do this is because, first of all, you're spiritually connected and very grounded to the earth, to the sun, to the universe, to your greater being. And you've also had your own experiences. So I would love if you would go into sharing your experiences and how they led you to what you're doing now, and how you know that you can help other people with this.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
The work is called Soul Council, is how I've termed it. It's been an interesting journey to even come up with a name, because I'm so adamant about not selling spirituality and about not being a healer. And so I had to really come to terms with what it is that I want to present, what it is that I want to articulate and put out into the world to be a contribution in a way that's completely, you know, not that I have to be different than every other people, but just there's so much out there. It's like, how is this different? Well, the difference is that it's coming from me, it's coming from my own personal experiences, and it's the way that I have come to heal myself throughout the years with the support and help of all the different spiritual modalities that I have studied, which has been literally almost every single one, pretty much all the major religions and, you know, New Age and goddess worship and all that stuff, and kind of dropping everything and coming back into myself, and then healing the parts of myself from my past, my sexual trauma, my drug use, my own personal experiences with, you know, lying and cheating and being a bad person in this lifetime, and reconciling all of those things to where I'm not beating myself up anymore, and I'm able to help people understand that because those things happen does not define or make the person that you are, that you can, you know, as we say, crack the glass ceiling and become more of who you are. And the way that I do it in the environment now, within a group setting, is I teach yoga therapy at drug and alcohol rehab facilities and mental health facilities in Malibu, which has been so fulfilling and amazing. I'm teaching a very restorative, easy yoga practice, and I sprinkle in my spiritual modalities and my somatic technique that I've studied for years to help people with their physical bodies, to help calm their nervous system down and help them get more embodied. I'm also doing a spirituality and recovery group, which has been incredibly successful in the IOP, the outpatient facility that I'm teaching it at. And I mean, it's just quite amazing to me how many people that are in recovery don't relate to the modalities and models that are presented to them for healing, whether that be AA or therapy or, you know, taking medication. And again, all those things can be useful for some people in their journey, but at some point I always say, like, you really have to go into yourself and go deep into you to find out why you do what you do. And it isn't always pretty, and it's not always easy, but that's the only way to really understand why we do what we do. So on a weekly basis, we explore subjects relating to extraterrestrials, to flower essences, to, you know, God and the devil, to, afterlife, what happens in the afterlife, is there such a place, heaven and hell. We talked about near-death experiences last week. Pretty much anything, you know, folklore. We talk about animals and connections to animals and totems. We talk about plants and connecting in with the earth and the sun and water. And anything that they want to talk about, we create a safe environment for them to come together in a co-creative experience with no cell phone devices and no mumbo jumbo in the room. Like if anybody's getting funky or their energy's not right, they usually leave on their own, but sometimes I have to tell people to leave because the people that are there really want to do the hard work. But I also feel that this work carries into people in everyday life who have a lot of secrets, who don't share a lot of these types of things, or have had family members who use, or have, been abusive, or they've been abused, or they've used drugs but they don't want to admit it, or they've had sexual encounters with people that are not so healthy, and they want to try to reconcile those experiences. So pretty much anybody who's going through anything can benefit from this work, because I basically sit and counsel with from a soul perspective, and am able to, I feel, I'm able to intuit and empathically and compassionately connect in with somebody and help them, and to be a contribution. But it seems to be really, really effective for people with drug and alcohol and mental health issues, because they struggle quite a bit. And I do believe at the end of the day that we're all spiritual beings, and that we're all incredibly humane on a deeper level, and that being embodied in a human body, and not the whole running meme of, we're spiritual beings having a human experience, but on the contrary, we're human beings having a human experience, and we're spiritual. And it's about being in this body, it's about being on this earth, and it's about integrating into your daily life. Because if you don't have a semblance of peace, you're never going to have a sweet life. And so I'm brutally honest. I cuss, I am myself, I am just share my truth. I wield my sword of truth quite a bit, and I also am incredibly compassionate. There's a lot of massive healing that takes place in these environments, and I'm really honored and grateful for the opportunity to do it, because as I've heard from my clients and people in that environment, it's not the running meme. The running meme is to take a pill and sit in therapy and analyze your mind, and it does help some people get to a certain point. But for me, I see, and I think there's a place and purpose for everybody. I'm not dogging, the way that they are doing their jobs and what they're trained to do. I'm just saying that other people want something different. And so I'm trying to bring in that other piece that's different, that's more alternative. And I do believe it can help people on a personal level too, because whether it is you're struggling with your seemingly mundane life and you have no reason to feel sad, but you just feel sad. I mean, there's plenty of humans out there like that. They don't understand. They have, they should be happy. They should be living life to their fullest, but they're not. It's about understanding what is within us and how we can tap into our organic nature, and, being like my whole, the basic ethos of what I want to present is being a natural woman, and natural men, and not falling under the guises and traps of the goddess religions and the moon, and worshiping and doing rituals and having to do all these things. I mean, I did all that. I understand what that is, and there's life beyond that. There's spirituality beyond that, and there is so much more natural heart beyond that. I mean, what I'm connecting in with now comparatively to when I was connected into the chakra system and to the pineal gland and the kundalini is exponentially different. And we have George Cavazos to thank for that. I have to mention him in this interview. Without his love and guidance and brotherhood, I would not be where I am today. And the support and the connection that I have with you and all these beautiful, like-hearted people. And not to also to mention my dear sister Leonie Kennedy, or actually she's Leonie. Avery Thompson is her new expression. She too has been, a great, great support system for me to explore and to be all of who I am. And that has developed, this modality has developed throughout time, and it's also very ancient, familiar to me. And it was time for me to step out. And I do face a lot of ridicule in my day-to-day life with some people around me, not everybody. but I'm learning to be more unapologetic in helping people in that capacity too. So I really appreciate the opportunity to share this aspect of myself. It's really quite an honor.
Oh, yeah. Thank you so much. I mean, you shared so much. There's so much that you just said that I could just, kind of keep going on. One of the things 2017 has been for me, like, and it's not just for me, I feel like this from multiple people that I've spoken with, that this was like such a transformative year. And I've always said to people, and it's like, well, I'm not a victim of this, so I didn't want to come across as a victim, but I've been so frustrated because I'm like, I'm in North Carolina, and I've always felt like restricted here. And so I kept thinking, I don't belong here. But it was so interesting this summer, as I knew that I was coming out of my shell, that I was surrounded by dragonflies, moths, butterflies, ladybugs. I mean, surrounding my whole house, coming into my, I don't even know how they're getting into my office literally every day. And I'm like, they're on my window panes inside, not outside. And I'm like, I don't know what to do with you. And I was trying so hard to connect. And I'm like, okay, this is about transformation, about freedom, about empowerment and embracing it. And so then I was really getting excited about that, and just really knowing that, okay, 2017 is this time for me to rise up. And I felt that with so many other people that I'm connected to. And then when you were sharing what you were sharing about your experiences, and it really, for me, one of the things I said to you earlier before we started talking during our interview, I said, I want you to just share with everyone your experiences, because there's so many people that give credentials. And it's not that credentials don't matter. People want to know you have credentials. But at the same time, there's nothing better than our experiences, because that is what we learn from. That's how we become empaths, and where we find our heart connections, and how we can, come together and support one another. And so there's no shame. I don't care what your trauma is. I don't care if you were the most evil being that you could ever comprehend, because I think we've all looked at ourselves and said, whoa, I can't believe that I did that then, when you look at who you are now. But there's so much respect and gratitude and love for every aspect of who we are. And Heather could not be this amazing, beautiful person that she is now and support you had she not gone down that path. She had to experience it to be able to come and say, I love you, I support you, I don't judge you, and I'm just here for you as you are. What can I do to help you through this process? If you don't experience it, if you're just the person that's got the degree and you're reading a book and someone's telling you what you're supposed to do, it's not the same thing as living it. And you can't have that empathy and compassion and the heart to support a person and to really help them overcome those traumas and heal themselves. And you won't heal them, they will heal themselves. So that's why I wholeheartedly agree with what Heather was saying. I do sessions myself, and I've never claimed to be a healer. I am just a person that just kind of holds a space for people to share, and I hear, and I'm intuitive. And so in that process, I allow them to share what it is that they need to express and be heard. And that alone is freeing and liberating for them. I don't have the skill set that Heather does. I haven't experienced all the things that she does, and she takes it to a whole nother level. And she can support someone on so many different aspects than I would ever be able to. And so I just really thank you for being honest and, acknowledging that, because people do need to know that you're not just here to help someone that's gone through this, but you have gone through it yourself.
And I think the difference is that I'm not, at least how I see myself, is that I knew from the very beginning of my existence on this planet that I was never going to conform into the consensus reality and get on the bandwagon. It just wasn't my bag this lifetime. I'm sure I've done it other lifetimes. I've always just done my own thing, gone to the beat of my own drum and done my own way. And for me to have had all those experiences was the only way for me to truly understand my role in this lifetime. And I think the misconception that people have about drug addicts and mental health patients is that, oh, they're different and, they're bad people and they've done terrible things. And I would say, who you are is you have more life experience from what you've experienced than most people could ever have in their entire life. And these kids are in their early 20s and they have stories that would blow people's minds and absolutely destroy them. And the reality is that everybody is on their own journey. We're all doing the best that we can. And, for me to sit back and say that I'm going to go to school and learn the Freudian, Jungian way of psychology, which is the study of the soul, which is definitely not, in my opinion, the study of soul, would be completely the antithesis of who I am. It doesn't fit into the way that I'm leading my life. So for others, that may be their path, but for my path, this is what I have done, and I feel really grateful for my life experiences. For yes, they have shaped me and developed my thick skin and my sense of worth and purpose because I have lived it. There's no other way to learn something than to live it. And you can learn about it in a book, but it doesn't mean that you're better or worse, and some of my favorite teachers have been the people that have had, less experience, or not as good at their craft, but they just had a way with parlaying and expressing themselves in a way that was very assimilable for me. I do believe that not everybody is everyone is for everybody. So it's important to be discerning into who you connect in with and to spend your time with. And the one thing that I really need to say is that I will not tell somebody what's going to happen in their life. I will not tell them how that I think they should be. My whole purpose is to help people empower themselves and to find those messages themselves. And the simplicity of which I parlay that for some people is just not effective for them because it's too simple. But the reality is that if you're looking for something complicated, I'm not your gal. But if you're looking to really get real, I'm your gal. And that's really the end result, because it's really important that I say that, because a lot of people have come to me for readings when I was doing tarot card readings where they just wanted me to tell them what was going to happen in their life. I'm like, it's your life. What is going to happen? Tell me. I want to know. I'm happy to support you in that, you know? So
be careful what you ask for, because sometimes when people tell me what's going to happen in my life, I'm like, nope. I know that's not going to happen.
To me, it's a red flag. If you want to go see the psychic down the road and with the crystal ball, that's probably a better bet. Yeah.
So I would is there anything else you want to say? Because you shared this on social media recently, and I just feel like it's the perfect way to sum you up. But if you have anything you want to say before I close, I want to let you go.
I think on the heels of what I experienced yesterday, which I was sharing with you before this encounter, was I went to see the film Blade Runner 2049. Never saw the first Blade Runner, didn't really know what was going to happen. And I walked into this theater and sat there for almost 3 hours and was in and out of weeping and having the most profound recollections and memories surface. That surprised me in a very profound way. And I want to say that I think a lot of people dismiss television and film as fantasy and, books and things like that. I think that if you pay attention, if we as humanity pay attention to the messages that are being conveyed in some of this material, that it can be of great service and contribution to our soul self, and can trigger huge awakenings and remembrances. And that even when we have human interaction like this, like what you were speaking of earlier, where you're just simply listening to somebody or you're having an encounter with somebody on the street, to pay attention to what's being exchanged, because we've devised and designed all this ourselves. our souls devised and designed this on a deeper level from the very beginning. So pay attention to your life and pay attention to what's happening around you. And as I say with everybody, go outside, take your shoes off, connect with the earth, connect with the sun. Don't be afraid or embarrassed or I don't know what to do. Just simply put your ass on the earth or put your foot on the earth and just connect and find out what happens. And if you don't hear anything, keep going until you do, because eventually you're going to start hearing things. And that is the way for us to stay humane as a humanity. And that was the big message that I got from this film, is that humanity, we're on a bifurcation. And I've personally been feeling this myself, my bifurcation in my timelines, where one side is, the synthetic, inorganic, and the other side is the organic and the true nature of my life. And I've, was at a crossroads for a long time, and I've been on this organic trajectory for a while, but the other one's been trying to sneak in and infiltrate. And with all the election stuff and all the AI and all these things happening out in the world, it's very easy to lose self into those arenas. And so just stay true to who you are and don't be afraid to be all of you, because therein lies the mysteries of life. Therein lies the medicine that we all seek. And therein lies our soul's purpose. It's just paying attention to us and what's happening and not being afraid to shine our bright light.
Yeah, that was beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so I want to close with something that Heather shared on social media, just to give you an insight as to how beautiful this lady is. My relationship with Mother Earth and Father Sun is the foundation for my existence here in this life and in my body. I do not venerate nor worship the moon as the divine feminine. This understanding has brought me great relief and a deeper connection to this universe and beyond. Seeing how the moon matrix influenced women so deeply by pulling us emotionally and energetically every month saddens me. Creating boundaries with my relationship, the moon has shifted me greatly. Helping people understand the moon is not what it once was, warning the relationship, and stepping into authority within the boundaries of your relationship with the moon brings sovereignty to one's life. It's definitely not the running Mimi on this planet right now, but for those who already know and feel this way, it can bring relief and help. As a natural woman, I am here to be a contribution to those who wish to explore this topic further. Be all you came here to be, even if it is different than what you expected or what others are doing. This shall set you free.
Thank you, dear sister. That was amazing. I appreciate you sharing that.
It's beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to come on to your beautiful and incredibly flourishing interview space that you're just handling like a champ. That's the right word, but you're just, I love it. And I'm so grateful to have been able to come on and spend this time with you. It's awesome.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here. And it's heathercarter.life. That's Heather's website. And I think that Heather brings such a beautiful light and wisdom into this universe right now that we can all benefit from. And so for any of you that resonated with her, please make sure that you go and visit her website, communicate with Heather. She's just a beautiful soul sister that I really have a deep, profound connection to. I love her deeply, and I definitely recommend if you're looking at connecting with aspects of yourself that you can't remember, and you want to remember your connection to the sea, to the earth, to the sun, that she is truly authentic in what she brings to the table, and she will support you unconditionally, wholeheartedly, with no judgment. Love you.
Love you too, sister. Thank you.